Hey guys,
I'm Hallee,
and I'm Jamie.
and this is Literal Nonsense.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello. We are back with an unexpected book that we didn't know we were doing.
Yeah, seriously.
Before we get into this, I have like a little Pet Cemetery update, which is really funny. So, since we read the book last night, me, Chelsea, and Ryan watched the new Pet Cemetery. So we saw that movie, whatever. But obviously, they changed a few things. We'll chat about it, but same kind of premise. And so today we went to his best friend's house, and he has three kids, his best friend. And so one of his kids is my husband's goddaughter. And their dog ran away, and we were looking for the dog. It was like a whole shit show. Anyways, point being, I had the goddaughter, and we were walking up the street looking, and her little scooter broke, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna like run back to the house, whatever." So it was like, decently far. It was the same side of the street though. And so she's running back. So I just called to my husband and I was like, "Hey Ryan, like just grab her, she's running towards you." When I tell you, because like we watched the movie last night, how fast he ran to this child, like, and I literally afterwards was like, "Were you nervous with her on the street?" And he was like, "Bro, I just kept thinking of the kid getting hit by the truck."
Oh my god.
And I was like, "Ryan, like she was running like to you, like she wasn't gonna cross the street." And he was like, "You never fucking know."
I mean, yeah, valid.
No, I know, but it was like legit, like he was running like how you would imagine Lewis Creed was running, like sprinting. And I was like, "Oh my god, you're ridiculous." But it was endearing. Anyways, funny. And speaking of the Pet Cemetery movie, so we actually had one of our listeners write a request. They want us to watch. I don't know. They didn't specify which Pet Cemetery, but the movies and do like a kind of book versus movie review. So we're gonna watch both of the movies and talk about them versus the book versus each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be fun. So I did my homework and watched the new one last night. We're gonna watch the original together,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll do a little bonus episode for you guys.
So cute.
So cute of us. So we're just like giving you guys all the content, bonus content, extra episodes. I mean, we're just feeling it's good. It's spooky
Inspired.
season. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're inspired in this fall weather. It makes me happy.
Speaking of fall weather, I really want like a cup of tea right now.
That sounds good. I bought pumpkin bread today to
Mm.
make. Hmm.
Oh my god, we roasted speeds. Pumpkin seeds last night too.
Amazing. Oh my
So
god.
yummy. They came out so good, but like I'm the only one who likes them, so like it's fine, but sick. I feel like so cute and cozy.
Yeah, I'm feeling cute and cozy also. I think I'm just gonna later on. I bought we went to the store today too, and I bought three pumpkin spice candles and Ryan goes, "Do you need all those?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." Yes, I really do. I need them in our bedroom, downstairs, and living room. So
Hmm.
the smell must permeate
Yeah,
the
the whole
entire
house
home.
needs to smell. Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this is a necessity actually. And yeah, so we had seen this book called Hidden Pictures by Jason
Colic,
Rekulak.
Recolic or something.
That sounds right. Okay.
Wow,
And
this is terrible. We're fucking talking about this book. We don't even know who it's by. Sorry, bro.
sorry, bro. I wrote Jason.
Let
Let
me
me
look.
Google. Yeah, I was just doing the same thing. Hidden Pictures.
Jason Rekulak.
Okay. Yeah, we were on it.
Yeah,
So,
close.
anyways, we've seen a bunch of people reading this book. The New Jersey Book Club is reading it for October as well. Just lots of people are reading it, and it's been on my TBR list for quite a while.
Hmm.
Because I had just seen it a lot.
Interesting. That's crazy because you were just like, we're gonna read this book and we're gonna do it for the pod, and I was like, oh, okay. But you supplied me with the PDF, so that was nice.
I did to give you a free PDF, and I was just like, it seems all right. So do you want to give us a little synopsis, Halgal? You can
Sure.
synopsis today.
Okay. So basically, the story is about a girl named Mallory. She's 21 and she has just gotten out of rehab because she is an opioid abuser, or was. So,
Indeed.
anyways, she's like I don't know, like almost a year sober or a year sober.
Mhm.
And her sponsor finds her this job interview to work as a live-in nanny for like this
Mhm.
well-to-do family.
Mhm.
Um, and right off the bat, it was giving housemaid vibes. But as
Yes.
the book went on, it was definitely like spookier housemaid.
Yes.
Um, so anyway, she goes for the interview. The husband is like being mad fucking weird, but again, the wife is like super sweet, super nice.
Mhm.
And then she's like worried that she's not gonna get the job. Surprisingly, she gets the job. And she moves in with the family. She meets the little boy. His name is Teddy. And Teddy likes to draw, but
But it's like a new hobby.
yeah, it's new. And, you know, they're like typical for like a 5-year-old kid. And, but then a few of them have like this fucking demonic looking woman in them. And Mallory's like, what is this? And the mom is like, oh, like she kind of like brushes it off. And she says it's Teddy's imaginary friend Anya. So for majority of the book, it's told directly through Mallory's experience.
Mhm.
It's a first person narrative, I guess is
Mhm.
what it's called, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So really, we're learning the story just through her, which is fine. I mean, I like multiple POVs, but
Yeah.
I felt like for this book, like it was okay that it was just Mallory.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, but boy, shit hits a fan like really fucking quick.
Yeah. And what I also, just from an artistic standpoint, I guess, the author includes the drawings
Yeah.
that the kid does.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Which
and
is
then
cool.
as the book goes on, all of a sudden these drawings go from like a 5-year-old drawing to like Picasso has joined us, and they're like fucking. I don't even know how to describe them. Like these like hyper realism photos.
Yeah, but
Um,
they also get like progressively darker too.
Yeah. Honestly though, just before we even start talking about the photos, I part of me wishes that they didn't get hyper realistic because I thought the kids' drawings were way scarier.
Yeah, I
Like
guess.
little kid drawings, the first drawing that came up in this whole book, right? So she gets the job. As Hallie just said, she's moving in and she's like looking through his drawings and he includes like 5 drawings. It's the kid with the fucking bunny rabbit, it's yada yada yada. And the last one is like there's this demonic ass woman standing next to him. When I tell you I like physically flinched, I was like, "Oh shit." Like, it really it really like scared the shit out of me when I was reading it.
That's so funny. I was like,
Um
yeah, things are not going to bode well.
yeah, anytime a kid draws something, kids are fucking creepy as in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
I do specifically though, like personally, I do like um horror with like a supernatural presence. Like I'm not a
yes.
gory person. Like, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like not my cup of tea.
I agree
Um
with you. I enjoy them better, but at the same time, like the ones that are like no supernatural element scare me more because I'm like, oh, someone could really do that, you know. But
I guess.
I do preference like spooky, ghosty,
Wait, this is such a random like
witchy.
interjection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your favorite scary movie? Do you have one?
Um, I don't know. I like I like just in general. I feel like the classic movies, but like what reminds me and gives me nostalgia would probably be like Friday the 13th type things or like
Hmm.
Halloween.
Hmm.
But I will say last night, after watching the new Pet Cemetery, and I like looked up something like a clip from the original, and I was like, oh yeah, like I think just like 80s, 90s scary movies, just like even how they were filmed, just like
Mm-hmm.
hit for me.
Yeah.
So any of those. How about you?
Yeah. I
Do
mean,
you have one?
I think the Insidious movies are my favorite.
Ooh, okay, yeah. I
Like they're
mean,
scary.
yeah, no, I'm not into that because they are
Mm.
scary. Give me like the nostalgic, like old slasher film kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
or like you know what, just give me Apple Crisp and some Harry Potter.
Yeah. I mean, we recently watched Night of the Living Dead, and I've never
Mm,
seen that movie before. But I liked the vibe of the movie, like how again, like how it was filmed, like because it came out
hmm
like I don't know, like 60s, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I think there's something like inherently
Spooky.
not just spooky, but like I don't know. I guess just like
It gives a vibe.
yeah, and I don't know like the word to conceptualize it,
But I could visually see what you're saying in my head.
right? You know.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, that was a derailment.
It's okay. It
Sorry.
was on topic. It was still spooky. Anything spooky season, I'm happy to oblige you. Yeah, so okay, so this girl gets this job. Um I, right off the bat, I was into it. I will say though, like it's always a nanny trope and it's always they're a convict, they're an ex-drug addict.
Yeah.
Like this
So
is
they're
all they
like
got.
unreliable, essentially.
That, but also
Also.
like, they stick with these weird conditions cuz they can't really do anything else. Like they're getting paid cash
Hmm.
with a family, like, maybe they can't get like a government job, whatever.
Yeah. But I think it
Um
also paints them as like an unreliable narrator.
Okay,
You
well,
know, because
yes. Not to me cuz like you're in their head, so like I feel like they're reliable, but the
no, yeah.
characters in the story
Yes.
inherently don't like believe them. They're like, "Well, she's an ex-drug addict. Oh, she's an ex-convict." Like,
Yeah.
and as we get going, I think that's intentional on the other characters' parts.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think you almost need unfortunately, you almost need the nanny to be an ex-drug addict or ex-convict to make
Mhm.
this work.
Yeah.
Um and they're young. So,
Yeah. Young, impressionable. Wait, so like we talked to like very little, but like
mm,
the where the place this book went
oof.
is wild.
Yeah, no, we'll
Like I
dive.
was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about, I guess, the beginning because I feel like the beginning was not predictable, but it was following what I expected of this book, right?
Mhm.
So again, the dad's a dick in the beginning, and then he gets super nice like right off the bat, and we were
Yeah.
both very skeptical.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know exactly what I thought was happening. So of course, Mallory, she meets the fucking gardener. Shocker.
Mhm.
Whatever. Um, Now, as the book is going on, right, the beginning, as Hallie mentioned the synopsis, Teddy's drawing all these fucked up pictures. And what's the lady's next door? Mitzi? Yeah, yes, her name's Mitzi.
Mhm.
We find out from the lady next door that in this house, Mallory's living in the backyard in like almost like a tool shed. They've like renovated to like a guest house. Okay, fine. We find out from Mitzi that way back when there's like this town lore that this woman was killed in the tool shed and it's her ghost and all this stuff. So when Mallory discloses to Mitzi that Teddy's drawing all these pictures, we're like, oh, it's the lady who was killed. Mind you, her name was Annie. His best friend's name, or his best friend, his imaginary friend's name is Anya. So we're like, okay, like the ghost of Annie is
Mhm.
Anya, and she is communicating what happened to her because it's a cold case. No one
Mhm.
knows how she was killed. I was into that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Were you like into this? Like we support? Like we were feeling it.
Yeah, like I thought that like I was like, oh, it's kind of like a thriller mystery, which,
Yeah.
we haven't really had like from the very limited thrillers that I've read. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've read like a handful. I don't Thriller isn't like my go-to category, but um I feel like there's not like there's mystery, but it's not like solving a crime mystery.
Yeah, like I was into the supernatural ghost wanted us to solve her murder.
Yeah, and like I thought for sure the kid was just possessed.
Yeah, by this ghost of Annie Anya.
Yeah.
I was so clearly by how we're talking, guys, that's not what fucking happens.
Yeah.
But that's very much so the vibe the book gave. And you know what? Honestly, I appreciate that it was leading us somewhere that it literally wasn't going. So
Yeah, no, literally you flip one page and it was like what just happened?
yeah. So pretty much the whole story is this. Now, Teddy starts drawing more like detailed photos.
Mhm.
Like, again, hyperrealism, as I mentioned. And we find out that Annie, who was murdered, was an artist. Okay, amazing. Also perfect. Matching up. We're solving this murder.
Yeah, like all the stars are aligning here.
Now,
It was almost too
there's
good, you know what I mean?
probably looking back, yeah, it should have been. But now there's some tension building with the parents and with Mallory because she's saying, you know, this is what's happening. It's the ghost. It's this. And they're like, are you back on drugs?
Well, I think
Whatever.
it's important also to note that like the parents are like super like scientific, right?
Yeah,
Like
they
the
literally said like
mom,
don't know religion talks.
yeah, like they're atheists, everything's backed by science. So they don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. And I think the mom is a psychiatrist, right? She works at
A drug rehab, I think, as well.
yeah, and then the dad is like in some like IT shit, but um that was like set from the beginning. So like the fact that, Mallory thinks that the kid is being possessed by a ghost and the ghost is trying to like communicate with them to help like find her and like solve her case, they're like not about it.
Yeah, no, and they hate it. And like from the beginning, you're getting a vibe like the mom's back at work, but they're very child psychology-ish, right? Like they're like, "Oh, we're trying to make Teddy independent. He goes to the bathroom by himself, he changes himself. We let him have quiet time." Like, they're very like woke parents,
Hmm.
you could say. Which I was like, okay, white suburban family. Like
Yeah.
I feel like it was pointed out all those little things I just mentioned, but very like subtly like how I just mentioned them to you.
Hmm.
Like, okay, this is how they are as a family, and you're like, wonderful. Um, and Mallory's not using drugs, just to clarify that.
Yeah.
So it's sad because she's like, no, like something's fucking wrong with this kid.
Yeah, no one believes her.
And eventually,
Except,
what's his name?
wow.
I literally want to say Enzo, and that's from Housemaid. Like that's not his
Yeah,
name.
no. Isn't it like, doesn't it start with a J?
Definitely doesn't start with J. Okay,
No?
I'll look it up. Uh, well, I will say this. So aside her gardener boy toy, um, he believes her, but I will also say that this really starts coming to a head and like I don't know, shifting when you find out that she puts
Adrian.
Adrian. That's not at all. Thank you. I don't know how you found that so quickly. I was still trying. Good job. So Adrian
Thank you.
believes her, and he's like a college kid, right? Whatever. Now this all starts coming to a head when Mallory's like, okay, this kid is fucked up, and like he's drawing these crazy pictures. Now, mind you, the pictures are showing up like on her doorstep in her little house, and she's like, what the fuck? So she puts like a little camera in Teddy's room, and like he literally like his eyes roll back in his head, and he's like fucking being possessed, like legitimately. Like,
Hmm.
that's like a legit thing. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, we can explain this away. Like, no, this kid's yes, correct, being
Mhm.
possessed by a fucking ghost. And I was like, huh,
Yeah. So then there's like this big also blow up
yeah.
about it because Mallory goes to his parents and they take away all of Teddy's like drawing stuff and they're encouraging Teddy to take a break from drawing. So Teddy's not drawing these pictures and he also like every other sentence is saying like I know Anya's not real. She's just my imaginary friend. Um
Hmm.
But in the meanwhile, Mallory is still seeing these photos pop up, like you mentioned, like in her
And she
house,
hears Teddy, like, even
having
after he's,
conversations.
and like she hears him drawing, and then
Yeah.
like, so she like knows, but he's not showing anyone pictures anymore.
Hmm.
So she's like, what the fuck is going on? And now these stories, these photos, sorry, as Hallie mentioned, are getting like increasingly more graphic. And so basically, the story is unfolding that this woman was murdered and like dragged through the forest and like
Hmm.
buried, not alive, but buried. And so again, we're very much like this is Annie and she's telling us how she was killed.
Hmm. All the meanwhile, she's also pretending that she's a Penn State college runner to her
To
new boy
Adrian.
to
Yeah.
Adrian, like her new boyfriend who comes from like a very well-to-do family.
Hmm.
And his all his family and all his family friends like all think that she's like a Penn State student. And Mallory's like, well, fuck, like I'm gonna have to come clean about this at some point. But everything comes to a head
Oof.
when now this is where the book turned for me. Like this is when I was like, oh yeah, shit is gonna go downhill now, real quick.
Yeah. Because at the beginning part, it was like, I will say this just before we even get to like the climax. This book definitely for me was a page turner the whole way through.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
read this book in a day,
Mm-hmm.
literally. It was fast paced. It was going. I appreciated that. I agree with you. It was slowly building steam, but
Mm-hmm.
where you're getting to right now is definitely as well the part for me that I was like, oh, okay, we're going.
Yeah. So previously in the book, Teddy and Mallory bond over both being left-handed, which I thought was like random, but as we know, things are never random, correct? So, anyways, she's taking care of Teddy. Teddy goes upstairs for quiet time, and they had agreed that they were gonna cook this like really nice elaborate dinner for the
Yeah.
parents, right? Because Mallory was like, "Oh, they do so much for me," like yada yada. She wanted to do it as like a thank you kind of thing. So the bitch passes out in the living room, and when she wakes up, there's drawings all over the walls.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, so now we have multiple possessions.
Well, because at this point as well, like Hallie mentioned, the mom took all of Teddy's art supplies and he can't reach them like physically. He's a child.
Yeah.
And she also gave him like an iPad to play with. So now,
Hmm.
like Anya, Annie, whoever's possessing this kid, like can't use him as like the vessel.
Yeah.
So they're
But
like, Mallory, you're up.
yeah, and what's funny is because like Mallory was like, I didn't do this. Like I can't draw. I'm left-handed, and she had like all the soot from like the
The
pencil, the
charcoal.
charcoal,
Yeah.
like on her right hand. And so she's like, "Oh fuck, like how am I going to get rid of all this shit before, in the next 10 minutes when his parents come home?" Well, suffice to say that they were not thrilled. And
Yeah, they come home and there's like she doesn't get rid of anything. Like she can't.
no, but then also is this before or after the dad is in her house?
I don't remember. We'll talk about that after. I'm not sure where that happens timeline wise.
Yeah, we need
But
to talk about that because that whole thing was fucking stupid, but that's
yes. Well, yeah.
besides the
So
point.
yeah, that's like almost like a side plot. But yeah, so Mallory, they come in and they're like pissed. She just drew all over their fucking walls. And she's going on a date with Adrian. And
Mhm.
so he shows up to pick her up and comes into this disaster
The
of
shit
whatever.
show,
And so of course the parents are like, "Were you using because this is craziness behavior?"
of course.
And he's like, "Well, using what?" Her like boyfriend. And they tell her, or tell him she's an ex drug addict. She used to do like opioids and heroin, like whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Aren't you a Penn State? Like, don't they test you at Penn State?" And the mom is like, "What the fuck are you talking about? She's never been in Penn State ever. And
Mm.
I felt bad for her in this moment because, that it was not an innocent lie. She was actually going to come clean to Adrian at dinner that night. I felt bad because she was like, "Oh, that's how my life should have been." Like,
Mhm.
I was like, I almost got a scholarship, or no, she did get one. They just revoked it because she got addicted to opioids, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I did feel bad for her because if she truly was gonna come clean to Adrian at dinner that night, I think that he would have been like, okay.
Mhm. But then also too, they also talk about, there's also this mystery surrounding like why is Mallory a drug addict at 21?
Correct. And yeah,
Um,
we'll get into that as well.
which I was like, interesting.
I was also like, yeah, because that's young, which does happen.
Yeah.
But
Kind
she
of.
she implies the whole book that there's also a reason, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I felt like the reason was kind of dumb.
I agree. So let's talk about the first subplot, which is the dad. So as we mentioned, the dad was very rude the first day, but then like super nice, not veering on inappropriate at all.
Mm-mm.
Would occasionally come out and like swim in the pool, and if she was swimming, he's like, "Oh, you can stay." But I felt like it was like fine. It was friendly. I think as a reader, you're always like when it's the dad and the babysitter, or the nanny, you're always like,
Hmm. Well,
But
that
he
was
was he wasn't being inappropriate.
that was the thing, right? And I was like, I really hope that this book doesn't like follow that trope.
Well,
They didn't, and it didn't like point blankly, but like at the end, it like
right.
all came out that like he had these feelings for her, but like I felt like it was just like misplaced.
Agreed. And
Like it wasn't
so
integrated well.
agreed. Because yeah, all of a sudden nothing was happening, not inappropriate at all. And then all of a sudden he's in Mallory's like little room, shed house, whatever, and he's like passed out on her bed drunk. And he's like saying all this shit, like, "Oh, we had a fight," and blah
Hmm.
blah. And like he's trying to kind of come on her, and you're kind of like,
Yeah.
"Where is this coming from?"
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I'll
Um,
take care of you,"
yeah, and I'm
and
like, "Well, do we discuss this?" Like,
yeah. I
weird.
mean, she was like very professional, and she like,
She was, and honestly, he wasn't even like horrible. Like once she was like, "Go back home," he's like, "Okay," like he wasn't
yeah,
really like, you know, given like horrible rapey vibes.
Yeah,
But
he
it
wasn't
was
like pushing
weird.
himself on her at
Yeah, but
all.
it was
But
weird
then,
that this happened at
yeah, and then
all.
like it was just like so random too. Like the book like mentions that there was like a tissue like on her nightstand, and she was like, "Ew, like I don't know, like what's that
Yeah, was
about?"
that like, was he jerking off? Like,
I
what
don't
was going
know.
on? Is
That
that what that
was.
implied?
I
I
feel like
also didn't know.
I felt like that was unnecessary.
Is that what that meant?
I don't know.
What do you think?
I mean, logically, that's what I thought in when I
Me
was
too.
reading. Because didn't she mention that
Ew.
like some of her bras were like on the floor or something?
Oh, in the bed with him.
Yeah,
Ew.
weirdo.
Yeah. If I came home for whatever reason, if I was a living nanny, and the dad was drunk in my bed, surrounded by my bras, and there was a tissue on the nightstand, I would actually vomit.
And you hate vomiting.
I do hate vomiting, and I would vomit. Ew, your bras? Like, first of all, okay, I'm not even saying like you should get underwear because that's equally as gross. But like, what is a
Panty
bra?
sniffers.
Right. Like, at least that's like something. A bra?
I don't know. And like, also,
The fuck?
also too, this whole time we were reading the book, up until we recorded Pet Cemetery,
Hmm.
I thought this book was written by a woman. Until you were like
Okay.
Jason, I was like, wait, Jason.
You're like, that's a crazy lady name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that vibe. Yeah. So I don't know. So anyway, so that's kind of like a subplot. Just keep in the back of your head as we like come to the conclusion of this book that the dad did that randomly. Um, it was random, but I guess if it ended the way that our boy Jason wanted it to, it made kind of sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, so it definitely had to be before the whole blow up thing because after that, like, she got fired, and so
Oh
like she only
yeah.
had like 2 or 3 days left, and then she had to
Yes.
leave.
So they fire her, right? Oh, well, hold on, because also her and the neighbor do a seance.
Oh yeah.
Nothing really came of that aside. They found like she was speaking gibberish, like the letters were all crazy, but Anya was possessing Mallory, like she swears. You get gibberish, whatever. Okay, fine. And so as this book is wrapping up, Mallory's getting fired, and Adrian is helping Mallory, and he believes her before
Hmm.
the big blow up of like she's a drug addict. But then this book ends with she had called and found some, I think it was like a grandchild or like a niece or a great niece of Annie in a retirement home like nearby.
Well, yeah, because Adrian was helping her. Like after everything came out, like he showed up at her door and was like, "I believe you. Like let's just like figure this out," kind of
Because
thing.
a picture showed up at his house.
Yeah, and so
So this lady calls them back from the retirement home, and Adrian's like, you know what? I'll go talk to her. Like, you're getting fired and have to move out. Like,
yeah.
I'll go to the retirement home.
But they were also gonna do like a big dinner as like her send off because she was supposed
Yes.
to leave the next day.
So she's like, I can't miss that. I must stay.
That whole thing was sucked. Like that sucked. That whole thing.
Yeah. So then Adrian goes to the retirement home. Okay, so now Adrian, again, I don't know what I was like, okay, we're going to find out what happens from this
Hmm.
woman, Annie's great niece or whatever. And so this is where the book starts getting like, what?
Well, we
Um,
also missed that the police are over at Mitzi's place.
because Mitzi's dead.
Yeah, so they
I
found
mean,
Mitzi dead out in the
to be
woods.
honest, whether that happened or not wouldn't have really affected what, you know,
No,
like
but like
the
it's
outcome. It's relevant,
yeah,
I
but
guess.
well, yeah. At the end, we find out why.
I'm just saying, like, Mitzi could have or could not have died, and it wouldn't have affected, like, the big revelations, I guess. For me, it didn't really, I didn't
Mm.
care that Mitzi died.
I didn't care either, but like
It
when you find
added,
out why she died, like the whole like the whole series of events towards the end was just
mhm.
like I don't know. I just felt like it was so like mishmash together. I mean, it was definitely
Yeah,
like thought
that's what I'm
through,
saying.
but it was like I don't know. It was like
It was almost
reaching.
like so, yeah, so much was going on, and so little time. Like, Mitzi's dead, this, that. And I was like, wow. That's why I almost, like, forgot Mitzi died, because, like, all the other stuff for me was, like, overpowered
Well,
that. And I
yeah,
almost,
because you get like slapped in the face with like 5 different like reveals, and you're like,
things.
what?
Yeah. Okay. So Hallie's right. So Mitzi is dead. Okay. So now Adrian calls from the retirement home. And again, I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to find out from Anya, Annie's relative,
Hmm.
whatever. And so now all of a sudden, the first, like, what? He's like, oh, she's black. Which I was like, what the fuck? Like, why does that matter? Whatever. But like,
No, because they thought she
she was
was
like, yes,
Russian.
exactly, exactly. So like, but I'm saying like, not why does this matter? But I was like, wow, that's very like, just he just dropped that on you, like, oh, and because even in the book, Mallory's like, wait, she's black, like, and
Well, it is her
I
great
was like,
granddaughter
well, right, but so then we
or
find out
something.
the truth about Annie.
Hmm.
So she was a Russian, I guess,
No, she was Hungarian.
Hungarian. Okay, yes, but
Yeah,
very white, Scandinavian esque looking human.
Slavic.
Yes, very Slavic.
Scandinavian is on the other side.
Well, Scandinavian's the same vibe to me in my head. Like the
Interesting.
pale, like Danish and like Russian are like not the same, but they're like, pale skinned. Like they're not Italians. I don't know. Anyways, I digress. Whatever. So we find out. Point
Okay.
fucking being, regardless, doesn't matter. This Hungarian woman came. She's staying at the cousin's house, which is why she's living in the back
Mm.
house. She's an artist. She paints back there, whatever. So she falls in love with a black man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they talk about how the town back then was not progressive, obviously.
Yeah.
She gets pregnant from this man. Now, apparently, the town over where the black man came from, they'll like accept them. And she was like, I'm in love with him, whatever. And so she left and, you know, went and lived with him, had the baby, had a happy life. Now, her cousin, the one who was like housing her,
Mm-hmm.
was like, mortified by this scandalous
Yeah,
behavior.
because he was like a well-to-do person in the town, so he didn't
Yeah.
want like to be
She
reflected
was,
poorly on him.
yeah, married or pregnant out of wedlock with a black man.
Yeah,
Gasp.
God forbid.
God for fucking bid. So he took pig's blood and framed her murder
Even though she's still
because
alive.
because that's better than her just simply falling in love. Okay, whatever. So yeah, it turns out from this great niece, she was like, yeah, I grew up with Annie. Like she was great. She died when she was like 90 years old.
Hmm.
And we're like, well, then who the fuck is writing to us?
Yeah, yeah.
So
It
Adrian's like, yeah,
all
that's literally
comes
not.
to a head.
Yeah. So Adrian's like, that's not what's happening. And Mallory's like, okay. And then Mallory starts telling us, the reader, like, oh, I'm having all these revelations at once. And I'm like, well,
Hmm.
what's the other ones, Mallory? Because I only know that Annie's not murdered.
Hmm.
And at the end of year, at the like firing barbecue they have, doesn't Teddy like asks Mallory for a bathing suit? He's showering. Is that how this occurs?
So they're getting like they have like a little like a outdoor shower to rinse off after the
Yes.
pool, so they can go inside to have the dinner. Because the mom was like, "Oh, like dinner's ready." And the cops are over at Mitzi's house, but like the shower is like over there by the fence. So Mallory brings Teddy to go to the shower to like rinse off. And Mallory's talking to the cop and she's like, oh, like, did you find anything? Like, da 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 da. And then Teddy's like, Mallory, Mallory. And she like opens the door and Teddy's like, oh, like, is the cop like gonna come get us? Like, are we in trouble?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird to be asking. Like, what
Hmm.
you know so she closes, like, whatever, she says goodbye to the cop, she brings Teddy inside, they're eating.
Oh, and also real quick, in this, as she's realizing things too, the family had just moved back from Barcelona. And
Oh yeah,
in
I
this
didn't
like
mention that.
in this same conversation of like like her opening the shower door and talking to
Mm-hmm.
Teddy, whatever, he mentions like, "Oh, I want to go on a plane one day." And she's like, "Well, you just were on a plane." And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "I've never been on a plane." And she's like, "Yes, you were." And he's like, "No, we drove from Barcelona." And she was like, "No, the fuck you didn't." And so she's also like, things are starting to add up in her head
Mm-hmm.
because she's like, well, you would have had to take a plane. It's also like 8 hours. Like, you remember that.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, we just went under like a tunnel, like blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, we drove, I swear. And he's like old enough to like, she's like, oh yeah, they probably just drove.
Mm-hmm.
But from where? So that was also real quick before you got to like the dinner scene.
Yeah. So whatever they eat, Teddy goes to bed, and then Mallory grows some brass balls and she goes up to the mom and she was like,
Right.
why didn't you tell me Teddy was a girl? And I was like, what the fuck? I was
Hallie.
like, what?
When I tell you, I literally was like, I'm sorry.
Because then at that point, I was like, where is this going? Like, I
I,
was really
right.
confused. I
Right.
was
Like,
like, how are we saving this book now? I was like, is this going to be some
uh,
stupid shit?
I also, just as a little digression before we continue on, why do these people always confront the fucking psychos.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Clearly, right? And then she also is like, oh, like you guys never went to Barcelona. All these things.
Yeah, she was like, "Where
If
would you
you're
come from?"
if you're adding all this up, okay, this family is lying about their kid. He's clearly a girl. They didn't move from Barcelona. That's enough for me to be like, absolutely not.
Hmm.
And
But
I'm
the
not
way,
confronting you about it.
okay, but also the whole conversation itself was really weird because like Mallory's like, calling them out on all these inconsistencies, and like between Ted and the mom, what's her name?
Caroline?
Yeah, between Caroline and Ted, like they're having like these little side conversations. Like
Yes.
Ted's like, just tell her, Caroline, and Caroline's like, Ted, I'm not dealing with this. And then it's just like these weird little comments. Mallory's like, what are you talking about?
And then doesn't fucking Ted hit her over the head with a bottle?
Yeah, like she gets freaked out because obviously, these people are not who they say they are. And she's like going to leave, and he fucking throws like a bottle of whiskey at her head, and she fucking passes out.
So then she wakes up in her cabin tied to the bed and gagged. And I'm like, wow. The fact that this little kid is a girl and they didn't go to Barcelona has really escalated quite far.
Yeah, seriously. Um, and
Well, and then this is when Caroline comes clean,
yeah, so essentially, what we find out is
which
that,
I don't know how I feel about this.
yeah, so Caroline and Ted were trying to have a kid and they couldn't have one.
Which I know Hallie
And
loves this. She's
yeah,
like, who cares?
literally, it's always like it's always revolves around infertility. I don't
People
get
do,
it.
yeah, people do the most drastic shit. Like, go adopt, Like,
Yeah, at that point, if nothing's working, maybe you just shouldn't have a child. I don't know. Is that fucked
well,
up to say?
clearly, well,
I don't know.
potentially, yes, could be controversial,
Like
but
maybe it's not in the cards for you, bro. I
these
don't know.
people shouldn't have. I'll go that far and say
Well,
that.
no. So, anyways, they end up moving from wherever they were. She got tired of her job, and she's from a wealthy family, so she has a plethora of money. And Ted is a fucking loser, deadbeat, so he just joined
Yeah,
her.
you find out he's a deadbeat. What the fuck? What's going on here?
I know. Wait, and he's also like 20 years older than her,
Yeah, and you're a fucking loser, dude. Get a grip.
which is crazy. Anyways,
She's like, he's a business of one person. I was like, you're a lame ass, dude.
yeah.
Lame ass
So,
loser.
so they end up in New York, like New York State,
Well,
and
they go to get away to see if the lack of stress will help them get pregnant at last.
whatever. Well, obviously, that's not
Mm,
what happens. So
no.
she like frequents this park or something, and
Yeah.
there's always this woman there, and she's always drawing, and her little kid, this like 2-year-old kid, is like always left to her own devices or just like looking at the phone. And Caroline mentions like, I could totally raise this kid better.
Which
So
what a obnoxious thing to fucking think.
exactly.
You don't know
So
how their home life is. Maybe that's their time to both decompress. Like,
yeah. So
the fuck?
Caroline turns on her Karen mode and goes up to the mother and like is like reprimanding her on how she should raise her kid, and the woman doesn't speak English. And so like they're like, I guess just like gesturing at each other.
They're like, ah! That's it. They're just yelling like that.
Yeah, something like that. And like
Something like that.
yeah, and then like Caroline comes back the next day, and like the kid has chased like a rabbit like into the woods, and like the mom hasn't noticed. So like Caroline has gone to the kid, and she was like, I swear I was gonna like return her to her mom, but then like
Yeah, Caroline.
yeah,
Okay.
something just came over me and I grabbed her and I ran. And I
Well,
was
no.
like,
Well, the mom found them. Like the artist mom found them and started yelling at her because she was like, "Are you taking my child?" And then
mm,
Caroline fucking
like hits her over the head with a rock or
tasered her.
something,
No,
right?
she tasered
Oh,
her.
oh yeah.
She fucking tasers this woman and then like yeah, and kills her.
Yeah, and then she goes back to the house and she's like, Ted, you have to clean up my mess. And Ted's like, okay. Like what?
And oh, by the way, here's this baby now.
Like what the fuck's wrong with Ted? First of all, there's like
Well,
very
Ted
there's like
clearly is a fucking loser. Like this, all this part told me was Ted, you're a fucking pussy bitch loser.
no, Ted to me came off as like an NPC.
Ted
I'm
sucks.
like, why is he here? Like he's really done nothing for this book.
Well,
And then like he's
Ted
thrown
makes no
into this.
money, and he's like, "All right, babe, okay,
I
I'll go
mean
bury
like
the body." Like, what a fucking lame ass.
I don't know.
And he
I
like,
felt like he contributed nothing.
well, I just think he literally is like, "Well, she has money, like she's crazy, but I can't leave her." Like, he's just such a pussy.
Yeah. Well, anyways,
Ted sucks.
so they fucking kidnap this child, and it's a girl.
Yes,
And
Flora.
so they fucking shave the head and start dressing it in boys' clothes and calling it Teddy.
That's fucking sick.
And then they move to
Can like
this
wait, hold on.
really cute suburban
Hold
town.
on. Hold on. Before we even fuck the town, can we talk about how fucking crazy that is? Like just like really like from a stance of like imagine this was on the news. This is insane.
I mean, I'm sure it's been done before.
I'm sure,
Like,
right?
it's not like an original thought, is it?
I mean, you know, the
I'm
fact that
sure I've
people
seen like
yeah,
2020 videos of, or
no, I'm sure. I
Dateline
just
videos or whatever the fuck they're
reading
called.
this, I was like, that's what's going on. And so now,
Yeah. I
so
was really thrown.
the kid's being haunted, but by its mother because the mom is like,
Yeah.
get out of here, you poor thing. And you know, we found out in the beginning that Teddy wets the bed a lot, which is you know common in childhood trauma. So there again, there were points that you were like think like but very subtly mentioned. And like I'm like, oh, he's peeing the bed because he's being haunted by a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
I would understand that, you know, like um yeah, that would make me pee the bed. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't thinking like childhood trauma he was stolen and it's a girl.
No. And
Not
that's.
once did that crossed my mind.
No. And that was just so. It was bizarre. It was crazy.
Okay, well so hold on.
I
So yeah.
mean, I liked it for the shock factor because it was not what
Yes.
I was expecting, but I didn't like it
Yes.
for the plot.
Agreed. I agree. I liked it for the shock factor. Um yes, I liked it for the shock factor, but overall, I was like, that's. I don't. I also didn't like it. I liked when it was like a spooky ghost. The kid was
Yeah.
drawing pictures. Had no idea it was going to be about child abduction, and the ghost mother was haunting him. But you
Yeah.
know, I give points for creativity. Truthfully,
I mean, I guess. But then, like, also, too, then I just felt like it was too played out, right? So it was like, now Mallory's trying to fucking overdose.
no.
No,
Caroline's trying to
Caroline's
overdose Mallory,
Mallory. Yeah, so she's gonna fucking shoot her up with fucking heroin and fentanyl and kill her.
but you find out that Caroline also killed Mitzi.
Yeah, it was Caroline who killed Mitzi.
It's all
Um,
Caroline.
yeah, and so
Caroline shoots her with it. Like
she shoots her. She shoots her up, and she passes out. Right. Which, okay, whatever.
I don't know if she passes out. I think because she says like she's like hallucinating. She's like, oh, I'm dying. I think she almost probably was so scared that she
Mm,
like panicked and was hallucinating because then all of a sudden fucking Ted walks in.
yeah. Now this is the thing. Now this is what I'm saying, right? So then Ted comes in. He like is like, oh, like I switched up the powder, so it was just baby powder that's in your system. Like you're actually fine, and you're like, what? Okay. And then he
Thanks,
just
Ted.
yeah, and then he just goes on to say like how he's like been in love with Mallory and how like he's gonna save her and take care
And
of her.
Caroline's crazy and fuck the kid. I was like,
Yeah.
Ted,
He's like, let's run away together, and I was like,
Ted is
what?
such a pussy though. Like, I'm sorry. Like, even that, I'm like, bro, like, you're the worst. Like, you're scared of your wife, which granted should be because she's a crazy bitch. But like, Ted's just giving like douchebag pussy finance, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying though? Like, that's really like what I'm seeing from Ted. Like, he's contributing nothing.
This is what I'm
He's
seeing from Ted.
this is what Ted's giving me. Um, he's contributing nothing. He's just listening to what Caroline's saying. He's like, okay, I'll bury the body. Like, you know, just like
Mm-hmm.
really just like whipped, but like not because he's in love, like just because he has no fucking backbone.
And nothing else going for him.
And then they named the kid after the dad. I was like, this is so fucking icky. Like,
Yeah. Well, Ted's act of heroism only lasts like 5 minutes, but then because Caroline comes and fucking shoots him in the shoulder.
shoots him.
So,
And he's like, I'll save you, Mallory. And I'm like,
I'm like,
now you want to be a hero?
yeah, this is
Come
like
on, Ted.
this was like the most drawn out fucking hostage escape, plot
Ever.
It was so
Ever.
long.
Because
I don't
then
I don't even remember what happens after this.
so they're fighting. These two are having the fucking domestic dispute of all domestic disputes. And Mallory runs away and she's like, wait, the child. I'm like, fuck the
Oh,
child.
yeah.
So Mallory
Dumb.
runs back, gets Teddy. Caroline's like, I'm coming, Mallory. And then
They're
they
like
run into
chasing
the
her through the
forest.
house.
They run into the forest, which, mind you, her and Teddy frequent the forest every day. They have their little magical adventure. So they know the paths very well. Caroline's fucking stalking them with the taser and this and that. Okay, fine. And so
Oh yeah, they climb up a tree.
climb up a tree and they had like a little stash there. Like they collected like little arrowheads or this or that or like whatever. That was their little hideout. And then the fucking ghost of the mother possesses the child, who takes an arrow and jumps onto his mother, Caroline, not the real mom, his kidnapping mother, and slits her
His
throat. And
surrogate mother
yes, slits her throat and
with the
continues to
arrowhead
stab her. And
repeatedly.
yes, and so the Mallory gets down because now the police were called by someone. They heard gunshots, whatever. Mallory like hugs the kid, rubs the blood all over herself, and was like, "I saved us in self-defense." And I was like, "This is what?"
Yeah. And then like she mentions how like she saw like Anya's like figure at the end of the forest, like she just saved, like, oh, she just saved us, like da 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 da. And I was like, okay, now I'm over it.
And then yeah, and then the book ends, and then there's an epilogue, which Hallie feels passionately about.
I did not like the epilogue. I thought it was unnecessary. You could have just left the book like that, and I would have been fine.
So basically, the epilogue, just long story short, they reunite Teddy, aka Flora, with her real father. He's so happy to see her. She is embracing her identity as a girl now. She's
She
happy
lives on
this
a
way.
farm
She lives on a
with all her
farm.
cousins.
Yeah, it's great. It's like a nice Hungarian love fest. So then her
What?
it was very
What?
like, I feel like it was very like foreign to me, like just like this like foreign little family on their farm, like
Oh.
living off the land.
For me, it was giving like Little House on the Prairie, but okay.
I was thinking like foreign little. I'm like, they play polka music in the nights.
That's crazy because
I saw it so visually. Anyways,
interesting.
so her and Adrian Mallory go visit Flora once they're allowed, from like the social workers are like, this is fine now. And
Hmm.
Flora could not give a fuck less about Mallory.
Yeah, she brought her like all these gifts, and she was like, the dad's like pissed. He's like, say thank you, Flora, like whatever, and
But
she
she's
just
like, I don't want to think about the time of my life I was fucking kidnapped.
yeah
And so like then before Mallory leaves, Flora runs and gives her a hug. So she does remember her and she does, miss her, whatever.
yeah, and we find out like that like Mallory wrote like the story, like the book is like her book that
To
she's gonna
Flora.
to Flora, so she knows like what happened.
Because obviously the cops like just know the kidnapping aspect and not
Yeah.
like the fact that the ghost of, Anya. Oh, Anya means mother in Hungarian. Okay, wonderful. Fine. So Anya and Annie not the same person. One's a black woman and one is a Hungarian woman who's murdered.
No, Annie was not black.
Yes, Annie. Oh no, Annie wasn't black. Annie was white.
Annie's
Her
child was half black because
yes,
her
yes, 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 yes.
her man's was black.
Yes, correct. Sorry, my bad. Anyways,
Jesus
fuck it.
Christ.
Let's
Come
change the
on.
story. Anyways, yeah, and so okay, fine. So obviously the cops don't know that like this was discovered because the ghost of the mom was haunting everyone. Also, side note, don't even know how really it attaches to our conversation, but worth mentioning it. The reason Mallory's addicted to opioids is because she was driving her sister to an amusement park
Oh
and
yeah.
crashed the car and killed her sister because she was like checking her phone. And then
Don't
was
text and drive.
right PSA. And then was on painkillers because she had like a bunch of surgeries, like she had a broken ribs and all this stuff, and then was depressed, and then continued to use the opioids. And then those ran out, and heroin's cheaper. Okay, great. Okay, so that's what happened to Mallory. Again, I don't know if that's necessarily relevant. I don't like. I'm glad there's a reason, I guess, and also they connected at the end, kind of like her and the mom, the ghost mom, had guilt over like the daughter getting taken slash the sister being killed. They were bonding in their ghosty realm. Fine. Okay, so I think okay. I think you can get a gist from us of how we feel about the end of this book. But let's talk about it. So, do you want to do our ratings maybe now, and we'll also tie the
Okay.
end in?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
I'm just like okay.
yeah, I mean the book I appreciated it for it was really quick to read. It
So quick.
like the language was like simple, but it wasn't like bad writing, you know what I
No,
mean?
no, no. I agree.
Like it was fine. And then it was a page turner.
Mm-hmm.
Um I liked the shock factor of the book, but I
Yes.
didn't like the plot itself in regard to the shock factor. Like I
Yes.
didn't like where the story went.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like fine. Um
Mm-hmm.
And then also the whole thing with Ted, didn't really
Mm-hmm.
care about it. And then the epilogue, I was like, there's no reason for an epilogue.
So
Um,
what? How many stars did you give this book?
so I gave it 4 just because it
Mm-hmm.
was a pretty decent book. Like I felt like it was a little bit better than just like your average 3.
Yes. Okay, so I gave it 4 stars as well for all the exact reasons you said. Now I will say this, and just this is kind of a observation with me in regards to thrillers or anything in general. And I think I've talked about this briefly. I find the beginning of scary books or thrillers or, any of this kind of general genre
Mm-hmm.
are great. The pictures was spooky. You're wondering what's happening. I often find I don't like the end of these books because
Mm-hmm.
when they explain it, I won't say it's stupid because that's like a little aggressive, but I don't like the endings. In
Yeah.
this case, right, it all tied together and I was like, "Ooh, there was little Easter eggs pointing to that." I think it was very creative, right? I was
Yeah.
like, "Wow, that was, but I agree I didn't like how it ended. But that's what I was talking to you about, like that movie Long Legs, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
XYZ. It's like there's always an explanation for why these things happen. And I think going back to our intro conversation or like our little banter in this episode about like our favorite scary movies, etc. That's why I like the like 80s and 90s scary movies slash stories better because oftentimes they don't explain it. Pet Cemetery. Oh, there's this magic that brings him back to life. Okay, that's it. Done. You know, Friday the 13th and Halloween, there is an explanation for like the villains,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like simple. Like it's not like this whole overarching, oh, we stole her and like
Yeah.
it just back then I think they also felt fine just making spooky things. Like the Blair Witch Project. It's just fucking scary. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a ghost. We don't need no more than that. Or it's like a demon. That's it. That's it. There's not like, oh, like they built on this land and this happened. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I don't give a fuck. I don't care about your explanation. Um Blair Witch could be up there for scary movie of my favorites as well. Just side note.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I'm saying? And I think
Yeah.
that's my hang up with these thriller and whatever um books is like they always explain I think a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like part of me almost wishes that it was Annie who was murdered and they solved her murder and that was it.
Yeah, like I think that would have been fine. I
But we wouldn't
probably
have had the shock factor though.
This is true.
Like to be honest, which this may be a weird thing to say, I think I would have liked the story better if it was Annie the artist who was murdered and they just found her body. I would have enjoyed that more, but I think I would have given it 3 stars because it would have just been like an average book.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 4 star was because of the shock factor it gave me, but I
Mm-hmm.
liked it less. Like, does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Yeah. I mean
Is that
like
like a dumb thing to say?
no, I agree. And like furthering that thought, like when in the book when Mallory's like hearing all these like noises like around her little shed house
Mm-hmm.
and she's like following the noise of like it of whatever is there like under her floor and she's like fucking ripping up the paneling or whatever like if you said and then a fucking figure came out of the ground and like did something crazy like that would have been cool too but it was just like a possum like I felt like that was like a diversion it was like oh you think it's this but it's not and then it went
Yeah, and I
fucking
appreciate
left
that.
field.
And I appreciate that in one sense, but like, yeah, the fact, there was still paranormal because it was genuinely the kid's mom haunting her.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I just think, yeah, I think it was good for shock factor, but I was like, whoa, this is far
Oh,
fetched,
but then
which,
also too,
fine.
what we didn't mention was that the reason why Mallory was fucking hired was to serve as a distraction from Teddy's imaginary friend, who Caroline knew all this time was
Yes, the mom
her
has been
dead mother.
haunting, yes, haunting her for a while. Also, I don't know
Which
what's
I
up
did
with
not
us.
like that. I thought that was so fucking dumb.
Agreed. You know what's really funny? I'm just like realizing I feel like this whole episode we're like, oh, I forgot to mention. I'm like, are we okay? Like, but honestly, you know what? Just also going off that point, oftentimes when books are like page turns like that, you almost get so sucked in that you forget like the chronological order of things and you forget
Yeah.
things like it's like the vibe. You remember the vibe of the book.
It's
And
like a
that's,
page turner and like everything's so chaotic, like
yeah,
in the
so you
book
do
it
forget.
follows, yeah, like
Yes,
it does
yes.
follow a linear progression, but like all this random shit's happening and like
Yes. And you're like, ah, yeah, like talking back about it. And I want to compare that to last week's episode, right? And we did mention at the end of last week's episode, Stephen King is like, it's not a quick read, it's not a page turner. But again, I'm sitting here, I know Victor Pascal's name, I know Judd's name. I could tell you Judd's whole story. I could tell you
mhm,
Lewis and Rachel Creed's whole backstories because it's like, it's thick, but like as a reader, you're going to remember it and remember the exact order of things in that story. This, we literally were like, what's the mom's name? What's the
mhm,
boyfriend's name? Because it's almost like you don't get to know the characters on like a deep level. You're just like flipping, flipping, flipping. Like I've read books like that, last year, and I almost am like, I can't even really tell you the plot. Like
mhm,
if I like read a summary, I'll be like, oh yeah, I read that. But it's one of those books which I hate to say, but it's like shocking in the moment, but easy to forget.
mm,
Whereas like a Stephen King, like I'll remember that for a long
yeah,
time. But in the
mhm,
moment you're reading it and you're like, let's keep going, dude.
yeah,
Which isn't that weird?
it is weird.
Because that's how I
I wonder if it has
feel.
something to do with like the dopamine hit, right?
Mm.
Like a book like this, like for sure was giving me like that fucking dopamine hit of like oh my god and like oh my god that happened and like you know what I mean, but like they're short lived, right?
Yeah,
Whereas
and then
like
it's done and it's over.
yeah, whereas like Stephen King, like everything's so drawn out and you're like oh, god this is just keeps going forever and ever and ever, but like you're really immersed in the story
Yeah, and like
because
looking
it's
back, it sticks with you.
yeah because like things are repeated multiple times. Whereas this
And
is like they're just leading you all over the place to get to the ending.
that is really interesting. And so, okay, I guess maybe spontaneous conversation. Do you prefer a book that reads slow that you'll remember the story for, times to come? Or do you prefer a story that's like quick page turner and then, 3 months from now you might not even remember their names?
I don't know because I don't think you can categorize many books into just one of these two categories.
What do you mean?
Like I don't feel like, if we were to take the mass of like all the books that we've read, say for
Hmm.
example for this podcast, I don't think they either fall under one or the other. You know what I mean? Because there are
There
books that
is
are drawn
gray
out, but
ground.
they're good. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like it's being dragged out, even though like it's a little bit of a slower moving book.
Yeah, but I think they could lean toward one or the other. Like, I would argue Colleen Hoover's for me were like this one. I read them really quick, but honestly, I was like, oh, I forget their names or I forget that, like it's mindless to read. And at the time when I read them, they were enjoyable for me, but like, did they stick with me? Like, a lot of them
Mm.
didn't. I also just think the books that are maybe a little bit slower and stuff like that, it generally seems like they use more like advanced like literary skill. And so I appreciate that more.
They're real writers.
But like kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like they literally know how to make a book stay with you, which I would argue is the art of writing.
They are an
Like
artist.
but I don't know, like a kinda, you know what I'm saying? Like for example, Hallie and I have not dived into the world of like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones yet. I would probably think those books lean more toward like a Stephen King level of detail and like
Yeah, for
slow
sure.
burn.
Oh my god, Game of Thrones for sure.
But that's my point is like at least then you're invested. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mm,
also
yeah.
those become series, so obviously you know the characters for like a long time. Now, are there books in the middle? Sure, like a Harry Potter, a Twilight, a Hunger Games. They're quick, but like you also it's slow burn in the sense you have a series. I think a book that is a series also has a different feel completely to it. I just think I don't know. I like these books. I think there's a time and place for both.
Yeah,
A
like I
quick,
appreciate that we read this after Pet Cemetery because like I needed
yes,
something that was like brisk.
quick.
You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, agreed. It was like, yeah, I needed like mindless, like I needed almost like to decompress after Pet Cemetery.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but I think for whatever reason, like even so next week, just to give you guys a heads up, we're gonna have actually at this point you guys will already have voted for which classic horror we're doing. We'll have a poll. We're just doing Frankenstein or Dracula. So vote it up, let us know. Um, so we'll know at this point, but we're recording before that. So sorry. So, anyways,
Mhm.
but like in that case, those are books that have stayed with us for years and years and years, but they're
Mhm.
slow. Like it's heavy to read.
Yeah.
it just seems like generally, again, that the books that are kind of slow and like maybe, not as enjoyable or like a page turner or they're not so mindless, those are the ones that seem to stick around for a long time.
Hmm.
Like, I don't foresee 100 years from now us talking about hidden pictures.
No. Well, I guess also too because there's a lot more. I wouldn't say that there's more thought put into it, but like the
Hmm.
execution of the writing, I feel is a lot more deliberate.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I bet you
so,
this Jason guy was just trying to do like a one-off. You know what I mean?
yeah, which great.
Get his name out there and whatever.
And hey, listen, we both gave it 4 stars, right? So we clearly enjoyed it. I'm not like hating on these books. Again,
Yeah.
I think there's a time and place for like a book that you want to like sit down and like almost like fucking like
Like devour.
yeah, like dissect it and like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Or like you just said, a book that you wanted to devour in one sitting and like not think. You just want to have fun.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and place for both.
Yeah, for
I'm not sure
sure.
which one I like better.
I don't know.
I think I like them for different reasons.
Yeah, like you said, there's time and a place.
Like, I have to be in the mood to read Frankenstein or Dracula.
For sure.
This
Yeah.
book, I was like, I could read this right today.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But I think the ones that impact me more are clearly the ones that are potentially a little bit slower, but, are
Because they really build the world.
more hardy.
You know,
Yes.
like the world building in Pet Cemetery was a lot more thorough than
Yeah. Yes.
this Hidden Pictures.
Absolutely.
Like we don't have much detail about that world. The book consisted of like basically living at the house, right?
Yeah.
And even then, like I can't really tell you what the house looked like. All I know is that it
Well,
was
right.
huge and it had a pool.
And the way that we imagined it, whereas Pet Cemetery, I bet if we both could draw, which we can't,
Yeah.
if we could draw
We
the
would
way
see
that
the
Pet
same
Cemetery,
thing.
yes, we would draw the same thing. I think this book is more of like what your imagination shows you, which again, I think
Yeah.
there's time and place for those things as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting little food for thought based on our last 2 reads. Look at us.
I always feel like, it's like, when you were younger and you had to read a book for school and then do like a book review.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I always feel like,
That's what we're doing.
yeah.
Just on a
I'm like,
weekly basis.
okay, let me sit at my desk and talk
Aww.
about my book.
It's like nostalgic, but
Yeah, it's cute.
cute. But yeah, so we did like this book. I definitely see why everyone's been reading it and like, holy shit, because
Yeah,
totally feel that. I'm just being a stickler and annoying, honestly. So
it's okay. I think every book we read deserves a little bit of
we gotta
healthy
critique a
hate,
little, yeah. But we finally gave a book 4 stars, both of us. So
This is true, yeah.
we're usually 1 star off from each other. So you know what? Good. Way to go, Jason. Good on you, mate.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, so we will see you guys next week. Like I said, at the point you're hearing this episode, we're gonna know what we're covering, but at this particular moment of recording, we do not. So it'll be Frankenstein or Dracula, or bringing you way back to some classic horror.
Yeah. It'll be
Which is,
good.
I'm excited. Get really into the spooky season. We're immersing ourselves.
Yeah, we're really trying to do a lot here.
Spooky season is good for books because there are a lot of like spooky books. Like we're gonna try to do like Christmas books, but like that's a little bit more difficult.
See,
It's like gonna be a romance.
like I
You
like
know?
Christmas as a holiday and I like Christmas vibes, but like I would rather honestly saw off
Wow.
one of my hands than watch a Hallmark movie. And
I
I
almost
just
feel the same.
know the stupid fucking book we're gonna pick is gonna be reminiscent of a Hallmark movie.
Well, we'll try not to.
And
Give
I'm
us
gonna hate it.
suggestions if you guys have any Christmas. If you're over Halloween already, which how dare you? But if you are and you're already into the holly jolly season, fa la la la, then give us some book recs. Whatever. We live to please.
Yes. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about that for a while, but
No.
next week we have another spooky read for you.
Woohoo!
And
Spooky season.
hope everyone's enjoying the fall weather, and hopefully, the seasonal affective disorder hasn't affected people too.
Oh God! All right. Well, on that note, we hope we give you the dopamine that you are so desperately craving.
Yeah, my cat's freaking. She got the zoomies right now. She's
Oh,
really
she's
going
happy that
crazy.
we're recording. Okay.
I don't know
Well,
what it is.
well, anyways, we will see you guys next week for some kind of classic horror.
Yep. See you there. Be square.
Right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.